Hi everyone and good afternoon. Welcome to this session, Beyond Validation from Approved Phonics Programme to Embedded Practice. My name is Laura Brogan and I'm joined with my colleagues Simon, Joe and Becky, and we'll all be taking a little bit of this webinar today. So let's have a little look at what we're going to be going through this afternoon. So today we're going to define what embedded phonics practice looks like. We're going to do this through 5 key pillars that underpin strong implementation. So those are the five pillars: leadership and vision, staff confidence and CPD, high quality daily teaching, assessment and intervention, and decodable book provision. And we're going to look at what these look like in practice and also give you the opportunity to reflect on what this looks like in your own setting. You will see references to Twinkl Phonics and Rhino readers throughout this presentation today, because we really want to be able to show you how these pillars are supported through some of our existing and new Twinkl Phonics and Rhino readers resources and tools. So everything that we're sharing today is coming from things that we know work in schools, things that align with national policy and guidance, and what we're seeing make a difference in practice. So I thought I would start with just grounding us, I suppose, in the evolution of phonics, because actually the teaching of early reading hasn't always looked like it does today. So we've moved from a time where phonics had a much lower profile and wasn't seen as the central approach to teaching early reading, through to the Rose Review, which concluded that systematic synthetic phonics should be the prime approach to teaching early reading. So then came the introduction of Letters and Sounds, the Letters and Sounds Handbook, which the government published as a phonics curriculum. It did become widely used across England, setting out kind of clear phases for progression in phonics. But because it was non-statutory, schools used it with varying levels of fidelity, and it also didn't provide planning, training or resources. So kind of the support really wasn't there behind it. Then we have the introduction of the phonics screening check in 2012, to more recently when the government have introduced a new criteria to make sure phonics programmes are high quality and consistent. So this essential core criteria update and the validation process really raised expectations about what programmes should include in terms of their content, the structure, the training and support that's given. So programmes did have to go through a formal validation process to check they met the criteria, which then, gave schools confidence that the programme they were using was systematic and well supported. So after 3 rounds of validation, there are now a number of validated programmes, including Twinkl Phonics and Rhino readers. Schools don't have to use a programme from the validated list, but they are encouraged to take an approach that's rigorous, systematic, used with fidelity, and achieves strong results for all pupils, including the most disadvantaged. And that's come directly from Ofsted. And to quote DFE, they said that they believe the easiest way to achieve this is to use a full SSP programme from the validated list, but this is not mandatory. So what's really important is that schools are confident in their phonics approach, and that's really strongly implemented across the school. So we now have a lot clearer expectations for phonics, and we have the validated programmes, and we have kind of a stronger national focus more recently. We are seeing most schools are using a validated SSP, and since the introduction of the phonics screening check, outcomes have improved in phonics. However, in 2025, 80% of pupils met the expected standard in the phonics screening check, which is a kind of figure that's been kind of plateaued for a number of years now. So that tells us that 1 in 5 children are still not secure in decoding by the end of year 1. And more recently, the government have introduced a national ambition for 90% of pupils to achieve the expected standard in the phonics screening check. So I think this leads us to consider what strong phonics provision really looks like for all learners in day-to-day provision. So this is maybe a bit of an opportunity after me kind of talking through all of those things to reflect on, what this looks like for you in your setting. You don't have to kind of pop anything in the chat, although you can, but even just that opportunity just to consider what phonics looks like when it's truly embedded. And we will continue to look at what this looks like through the 5 pillars through the rest of this session. Okay, so I'm going to start with leadership and vision, which is our first pillar that we're going to look through today. So in schools where the culture of early reading is really strong and embedded, we do tend to see a really clear shared vision for reading. So early reading and the teaching of early reading and phonics being prioritised across the school, and all staff understanding the importance of that. We see consistency across classrooms, so not just in kind of what is taught, but how it's delivered. So routines, language and expectations really consistent. And leaders in the setting knowing what that looks like, what high quality phonics teaching looks like, and what has been agreed in their setting, and then monitoring that regularly. We tend to see a real investment in staff skills and confidence. So providing ongoing CPD that's prioritised for all staff to continue upskilling and giving those staff members confidence. And then for subject leaders that have the responsibility to lead that subject, them to be given the opportunity to, you know, monitor the provision and also provide ongoing coaching and support to other staff members. We see assessment being used to inform decisions. So leaders having a really clear overview of progress across groups and being confident to articulate this, as well as gaps being identified early and acted on quickly to avoid pupils kind of having gaps in their learning and falling behind. And then a culture where reading really kind of it matters, and that kind of strong emphasis is placed on developing that whole school culture that's embedded throughout the school. And that as well looks like families engaged and also understanding how they might support their learners at home, their children at home. So we're going to look at how we support this with Twinkl, Phonics and Rhino readers. So thinking about leadership and vision, particularly to begin with, we know the importance of the role of the subject leader, and that person, it's really important that they have the time and the structure to be able to lead early reading effectively across their setting. So what we've seen is that strong implementation is really supported when leaders have access to clear guidance on what to look for when they're setting out their provision and monitoring it, practical tools to be able to do that, and support on how to, you know, develop others through coaching. We have a collection of subject leader resources, and this also includes a new collection that's available in our new essentials package. And this has been added to and developed in response to policy and framework updates, including the new Ofsted inspection framework, as well as customer feedback. So this is some examples of some of those resources, such as kind of the role of the subject leader, which really helps translate that key area into everyday practice, and yearly reporting resources to kind of support really thorough and organised leadership. And another example is our questions to think about when leading phonics. So again, supporting really reflective subject leadership. In terms of staff confidence and skills, which I did refer to as part of the strong leadership and vision, we have our on-demand and live CPD offers, which Becky is going to go through next. And these support the expectation that all schools ensure staff are kept up to date with the necessary training and resources for their phonics programme. And we also have our assessment offer, which supports that strong assessment. And this now includes our new digital assessment and tracking tool, which is available through Phonics Tracker. So this really gives leaders a system to assess quickly, and it makes progress visible instantly across groups, enabling gaps to be identified and plugged really quickly. But I will be sharing a little bit more about that in more detail later. But I'm now going to pass over to Becky to talk through CPD and staff confidence.
Thank you, Laura. So what does staff confidence in phonics look like, and why is it important? So while a systematic synthetic phonics programme provides the resources and structure for effective phonics lessons, it's key that staff have a secure foundational understanding of the subject of phonics itself and its best practice to ensure that they can adapt their teaching to meet the needs of the learners within their class based on that regular formative and summative assessment. So an over-reliance on a scheme without that knowledge underpinning it can lead to misconceptions in learners failing to be addressed at the point that they occur, and teaching moving on before learners are secure. So this is particularly highlighted recently with the the curriculum and assessment review, emphasising that increased focus on the early identification of learners at risk of falling behind to support all learners making good progress in phonics. Therefore, secure staff subject knowledge through initial and ongoing professional development is vital for successful phonics teaching and learning, not only to align with those external expectations, but also to ensure that staff don't feel overwhelmed or unsure about the most effective way to deliver their phonics lessons, assessments and interventions. That regular CPD also supports whole school consistency in implementation, which is vital, especially when making adjustments to a programme to ensure that it's effective for your setting and learners. So to support this, we'd recommend that all schools start by auditing their school's phonics practice. This audit pack has sections for whole school self-audit, as well as sections to be completed by your individual members of staff. And this allows them to reflect on their own individual phonics knowledge and practice to help, and will help a phonics leader identify kind of individual needs as well as kind of year group needs and whole school needs. Completing this at the very start of your journey with Twinkl Phonics is really helpful, but also doing it at least annually as well to reflect on what those training needs are, any areas of development, and to support that ongoing monitoring of phonics across your setting. So part of our essentials package is our brand new on-demand professional development, and this contains a growing library of courses to support the implementation of Twinkl Phonics as well as ongoing CPD. It's hosted on our sister site, Twinkl PD, with each course having a mixed mode of delivery, including ebooks, infographics, videos, lesson recordings, and opportunities for reflection. Courses can be worked through at their own pace as well. So whenever your staff have time to use it. Schools are able to allocate courses to individual members of staff to create that personalised approach to ongoing professional development in phonics. And this is especially helpful for kind of recently qualified teachers or teachers and staff that are brand new to your school and the delivery of Twinkl Phonics. Schools can also review their staff's progress on each course and have an oversight of phonics CPD across their setting. So having access to this training on Twinkl PD is the best way for schools to keep up to date with phonics training and ensure fidelity to the Twinkl Phonics SSP programme. So alongside this, we also have our live training offer, which is available both virtually and in person. So this training gives the benefits of working alongside our expert trainers to tailor the training to your setting's individual needs. So when training is booked, you'll meet with your trainer to discuss your setting specific needs, and they will work with you to select the modules that you need, but also to tailor the messaging to ensure that that session is delivered to achieve the aims of your school. During the training, schools can expect a mix of direct instruction and interactive activities, so staff leave feeling confident in navigating Twinkl Phonics resources and delivering the programme effectively. The training is divided into a series of focused modules, each designed to be completed within about an hour, and this structure allows for flexibility and customization to meet the unique needs of the setting. We also have flexibility in the kind of length of delivery. We offer half day and full day format, as well as twilight sessions being available as a top up or to split those longer formats across multiple sessions. And then after a session, that support continues. You'll be offered a follow-up meeting with your trainer to support that ongoing implementation of the Twinkl Phonics in your setting. So really having that support through that whole journey. And the live training also has the benefit of having setting specific training modules for SEND settings, preschools and Key Stage 2 settings or staff within a school, to ensure that staff feel that the training is serving them and their learners. So it's a great way to ensure that all staff receive the same message at the same time, and allows you to work alongside the Twinkl Phonics training team to ensure that the programme works effectively for you and your learners. So our free CPD events run throughout the year and are a great way to support that ongoing professional development and confidence in your staff. So our 30-minute CPD sessions focus on specific skills or resources in the programme in that short, sharp session. Previous sessions have included focuses on learners struggling to blend, the Twinkl Phonics workbooks, learners with English as an additional language, and the effective use of classroom displays. All of these sessions are also recorded, so can be revisited in the CPD area of the Phonics site. So that's a great way to kind of revisit them and support that ongoing development. We also have our network events, which are different ones for different educators. So we have our Phonics leaders and SEND network events, which run half-termly, and they have split in half between CPD and then discussion and networking time. Our Key Stage 2 networking runs termly to support anyone who is working with learners who still need phonics instruction beyond Key Stage 1. And this again follows that same format as the other network events, so half CPD, half discussion and networking. So the networking events aren't recorded for GDPR purposes and to support that interactivity. So they are only available for people who attend those live. And the final thing I want to highlight today to support that CPD and staff confidence is our coaching record resource. This is one of our brand new subject leaders resources, and it guides you through that ongoing internal phonics development to support specific educators or groups of educators with their phonics practice. It's a great resource for phonics leaders to ensure that phonics provision is strong and that all staff are delivering phonics with confidence and in alignment with the programme and your individual settings non-negotiables to maintain a cohesive whole school approach. The guidance included supports phonics leaders to implement the coaching model in a supportive way that empowers staff to have ownership over their own practice. And I am now going to pass over to Simon to talk about phonics provision.
Thanks, Becky. So yeah, we're going to have a little chat about what high quality phonics provision actually looks like. So really, whatever phonics program you're using, there are certain key principles of what you'd expect to see to really embed high quality phonics provision. So for example, you'd expect to see daily systematic teaching that follows a really clear progression. You'd expect precise modelling of sounds, so using pure sounds at all times, while you're also using blending and segmenting and teaching those. You'd want to see pupils given frequent opportunities to practice their skills and apply them in context. You'd want to see teaching that is responsive to pupil needs that can be adapted as necessary. A consistent approach to routine, using the same terminology, keeping expectations really consistent across the setting so that people know what a lesson's going to look like from day to day and the children know what to expect as well. And of course, a really strong focus on accuracy and automaticity. So in relation to Twinkl Phonics, if you're using our program, these are some of the ways that we support that approach. So we use story-based lessons, which are based in the world of our phonics family, Kit and Sam, and their parents and grandparents and their friends. So it creates really relatable and engaging stories. We also use a daily 5-part structure in all of our lessons. So that's consistent and predictable. All of lessons start with a revisit and review of prior learning, followed by teaching of a new GPC or spelling rule, then a section of practice using that new learning, application within context, and then assessment as part of every lesson. We also feature GPCs taught throughout levels 2, 3, 5, and 6. We teach over 150 tricky words and common exception words, along with a step-by-step method for learning them. For if children find it hard to memorize them, we actually teach a kind of step-by-step process to help those children to be able to embed those words, both for reading and for spelling as well. We also include follow-up activities, including a weekly reading and writing mini book, and also a daily workbook with activities for children to practice and consolidate their reading and writing. All of our lesson presentations are editable once you've downloaded them, so you can actually adapt and refine lessons to make them work for your setting. We also now newly have our no-tech version of our daily lessons, which allow you to teach certain groups or whole classes, without being attached to a screen if you prefer that approach. So you could take certain groups, you could have certain children away from the screens for certain lessons, and those are all, they keep to the same exact progression. So if some children do some lessons with the no-tech and some lessons with the original program, those children will progress at the same pace. So the whole no-tech program will be available in time for September. We've got our levels 2, 3, and 4 available on site now. So just to look very quickly at what our progression looks like, we offer a really comprehensive 36-week program for level 1. So this includes coverage of all 7 aspects of phonological awareness. We've got accompanying interactive books, which also focus on pre-phonics skills and run alongside and can be used to really complement that level 1 practice. Then we've also got a 6-week program of optional bridging planning for the end of nursery or the beginning of reception, which we kind of introduce the beginning of letter sound recognition to kind of give children a sort of segue into that formal kind of level 2 learning. Then our levels 2, 3, and 4 would typically be taught in reception year. So these levels form a combined 24-week program, which includes introducing children to grapheme phoneme correspondences, or GPCs. It also includes tricky words. And then we introduce the daily lesson structure, where we introduce 1 sound a day, along with the weekly mini books and workbooks for reading and writing practice. We do slow down the teaching a little bit as the children start to learn digraphs and trigraphs, as we've recognised that those are quite tricky. Children need a little bit more time to embed and consolidate that learning. We then have level 5 and level 6, which are each 30-week programs, which are typically be covered in year 1 and year 2. These feature also daily lessons, which we normally introduce 1 sound per week, and then include weekly common exception words alongside the GPC learning. Children are also introduced to spelling rules, and we have a weekly grammar focus as well to support the developing literacy skills across the board. I'm going to pass back to Laura to have a little chat about assessment and intervention.
Thank you, Simon. So now we're going to look at assessment and intervention as our 4th pillar. So just kind of to ground us here in what we would see in kind of strong settings with this provision, we would see assessment embedded into teaching. So staff constantly check in for understanding through kind of their own ongoing formative assessment. We would see gaps being identified early. So this is, you know, something that we would flag as pupils move through the progression, but actually ensuring that learners have secured the foundations of early reading, so those pre-phonics skills. And like Simon mentioned, for Twinkl Phonics, this is all delivered through our level 1 and level 1 to 2 for that bridge. And we would see teaching adapted in the moment and where necessary, where pupils might need the opportunity to overlearn and kind of embed skills maybe in a slightly different way. We would see timely, targeted intervention. So following that assessment, seeing support that is directly linked to the gaps that have been identified. We would see and we would have progress tracked and reviewed regularly. So all staff and leaders have a really clear picture of who is on track, who is at risk of falling behind, and kind of what needs to happen next. So the curriculum assessment review as well, the recent in November, the government response made it quite clear that schools must have the tools and training to identify children at risk of falling behind and act early to provide that additional support. So that kind of key message around pupils at risk and that early intervention, acting quickly, is very key and current at the minute. Just got a couple of quotes here that kind of link back to the validation process for systematic synthetic phonics programs. So you can see specifically calling out frequent and ongoing assessment and using that language of identifying pupils at below or above, so support can be provided. And then more recently, that response to the curriculum assessment review that specifically called out that schools need, that SSP programs like Twinkl Phonics need to give schools the tools and training to identify children at risk of falling behind, which is what we do to support you here. So our assessment offer includes downloadable assessment, which is available under the Ultimate subscription. And as I mentioned previously, we now excitingly have a digital assessment offer available via Phonics Tracker. So we will continue to have both of these assessment methods available. And our message to school leaders is that they need to identify a consistent approach to assessment using the tools that work best for their staff and pupils. So using our assessment resources or Phonics Tracker, and both of those are aligned, which I will show you a little bit about here. So this is just a quick video demonstrating Phonics Tracker. It is a digital assessment and tracking tool. So you can see here that, apologies, that video is a bit smaller than I thought it would be, but as I move through the assessment here on the screen, you can see that for level 1, it has those icon statements that are directly taken from our progression, and you can kind of quickly mark whether pupils have achieved or not achieved that. And that is automatically pulled into kind of the reporting system. Then as we work through the different levels, so you can see here, I'm just showing what it would look like to assess level 2A GPCs. So the ability to be able to do this alongside pupils, it can be accessed on an iPad or a laptop, and you can kind of just go through and mark correct or incorrect. I'm moving here for tricky words as well. There is as well the opportunity to add comments to different parts of the assessment. And you can see here, this is me demonstrating the blending aspect on Phonics Tracker. So as you can see, it's kind of a really quick and easy way to be able to assess alongside pupils. But what is more kind of mainly exciting here for us at Twinkl is the reporting feature. So you can see here me demonstrating what that looks like when I've kind of looked at those different aspects of the assessment as a report. So the gaps there can be identified through those kind of crosses. And this here is a combined feature. So if you did want to look at the assessment as a whole, you can toggle across those different aspects of the assessment, and you can see how it's broken down individually, but then also a combined percentage. And we do have guidance on how to kind of understand those thresholds for secure and working below on Twinkl PD, which is what Becky spoke through earlier when she was talking about CPD. And you can also print and save those reports, so you can kind of see that snapshot in time of those different assessments, and you can really visually see the progress learners are making. I'm now going to pass on to Simon to talk a little bit more about how that Phonics Tracker platform and our assessment offer work together.
Yes, so we built these resources in order to be able to help teachers to really streamline the process from assessment into intervention and next steps. So kind of this is how the assessment offer and the guidance would work together. So as you can see on the screen, this shows the Phonics Tracker view on the right, and it kind of gives us a clear visual of pupil performance against level 2 GPCs. And then on the left is our next steps document, and that takes the assessment information from the assessments that you've carried out and kind of translates it into actionable next steps. So it might include suggested intervention programs to support children who are not yet working at the age-related expectation. So we want to make the journey really easy for you as the teacher to be able to see from those assessments where they land in terms of their next steps and what suggested actions we provide for you. So this is kind of what that journey looks like when the assessment leads to intervention for pupils who need further support. So from your formative assessment, you may have observed that your class as a whole are not secure in a particular GPC or another aspect of their learning. So as you can see across the top here, you could choose to use the consolidation planning to support you with this and go back over the objective to ensure that they've embedded the learning. So the consolidation planning kind of gives you a way to relearn content that's been learned by a large group of children, particularly the whole class. Or you may have identified that a specific group of learners who would benefit from some overlearning and a more practical approach. And if those are working within levels 2 or 3, you can set up some Explorosaurus activities to support them. Or there may be some learners who have not secured a particular aspect of learning from that day. You could use our one-to-one same-day intervention to pick this up with those same children later on that same day. So looking at the kind of the lower down path, at the end of each half term, when you've completed your summative assessment for your class, you may notice that there are some children that still have needs. So you may use consolidation planning during the week of assessment or afterwards in order to pick up some of the gaps that you've identified in your class. Or you may have a whole group of learners who are working a level or more behind the teaching that's going on with the main class. So these learners might need a Key Stage 1 or Decoders intervention. Decoders is our Key Stage 2 programme. I'll talk a bit more about that on the next slide, which you could use to rapidly catch those children up with their peers. So 2 different kind of pathways depending on what those sorts of needs are that you've identified from either your formative or your summative assessment. So to look a little bit more about those 4 kind of intervention pathways, so we have these different layers of intervention. So from strengthening early foundations through to really structured intervention and support for older pupils. So first of all, Explorosaurus, which is designed to reinforce level 2 GPC learning through hands-on continuous provision type activities. So it sort of utilizes the level 1 skills and applies those to sort of level 2 GPCs for children right at the beginning of their learning journey that just need something more practical, more hands-on, just to really relearn those GPCs that they've initially learned. The one-to-one same-day intervention is a scripted one-to-one program. So you could have another adult, support staff, teaching assistant, or it might be that the teacher yourself wants to administer this. But it gives you that one-to-one intervention where you could work with a child the same day as their phonics lesson to kind of give them that extra little bit of relearning to help them keep up with where the rest of the class is. Then the Key Stage 1 intervention and decoders, they kind of have a similar structure, but aimed at a different audience. So they give you group-based interventions for supporting targeted groups that you've identified with gaps to catch up with their peers. So it might be that they just have, they might be missing kind of behind on a whole level or a handful of different GPCs, and you want to sit with that group of children at a later moment to be able to give them time to relearn, to be able to go over those GPCs that are missing and try and address the gaps to help them kind of catch up to where the other children at their level. I'm going to hand over now to Jo. It's going to be able to talk to you more about our book offer.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, the 5th pillar that we're going to talk about today is your decodable book provision. And of course, that's going to be a crucial part of phonics provision in your setting. So I'm going to have a little look now at what you should be looking for, I think, in your decodables and how you'll know that your provision here is being impactful. So as we know from the reading framework, the key point about decodable books is that they're clearly matched to your phonics provision and that they align precisely with what children have been taught. So they need to do 2 jobs, really. They need to both reinforce the recent phonics teaching, but they also need to consolidate all the things that children have been covered further back. And here, I think it's good to point out that aligning precisely doesn't always necessarily mean full of the phonics content that they've been taught that week. Many learners will for sure be able to decode texts that run in parallel with the phonics knowledge, but they may well find it harder to demonstrate the sort of fluency, prosody, and good comprehension that you'd like them to if the phonics in their books is also brand new as well. So many settings do find that having some decodable readers running a little behind the phonics teaching gives better results in the end, and it keeps motivation up. Another point really that goes without saying is that your reading practice needs to be prioritised and planned in. And this should really be happening separately to phonics provision and separately to any reading that's done at home. I do think that the best people to decide on how to plan how reading will happen in a setting are generally the people that are managing that setting. And if a reading provision timetable is imposed externally, it is going to be likely to be difficult to stick to. So obviously it does need to happen, but I think that you are all best placed to decide how best to do this in your setting. So it's not something that we would prescribe, but I would definitely say that it's something that needs to be firmly considered and definitely made a priority to read outside of phonics as well. Another key principle is that all your pupils will need to have access to books that engage them and match their needs. And I do feel it's important that the books you're using need to look exciting to children, not like homework that they need to do, but something that they're actually going to want to pick up and read. They need to be absorbing and interesting. They should show variety in their genres and the subject matter so that all children get something that appeals to them. And it's really, really important that they reflect the pupil's own experience. So ideally, all of your children in your setting should see themselves somewhere in the books they read. And of course, all of your learners are going to need access to the right books at the right time to suit them in a cost-effective way that's affordable and works for your setting. And for some places that might be physical books, in some places it may be ebooks, it may be a mixture of both. You might also be looking for something that works on a class tablet. So flexibility in accessing those decodable books is definitely a good thing to be looking for. And I'd say finally, children do best when home reading is supported and parents are on board with your expectations. I know Laura touched on this earlier. And sometimes some of the things that happen, children may come home with a book and sound quite fluent, and that may make some parents think that the books are too easy. Rereading books may be a new concept for some parents to understand as well, and the importance of that. And some parents might not fully understand how best to help with the phonics that's needed to read the books. So being clear with parents and carers on these points will result in better outcomes for your learners. So how do we support with all this at Twinkl? Well, Twinkl Phonics gives you a rich range of decodable books to align with your teaching and support your learners at every step. And there's two kinds of decodable books that your learners can access. For embedding the weekly phonics that's covered in the sessions, there are the Twinkl Phonics mini books. They're on the top on the left, and there's one for each week of teaching. They've got really key scaffolding in, such as lots of repetition and sound buttons to consolidate those new GPCs and those tricky words in context. And they're used as part of the weekly phonics teaching within the sessions. For reading outside of the phonics sessions and to boost the fluency, the prosody, and build all those other reading skills and comprehension, there are the Rhino Readers. And these Rhino Readers books do run slightly behind the phonics teaching for that reason of helping to consolidate and embed the learning. And they're perfectly matched to the progression, of course, within Twinkl Phonics. There's a wide range of genres and text types. We've got everything from poems to play scripts, and they're all hand-drawn, hand-illustrated, fully colour illustrated. The main feedback we have is that children do enjoy them much more than other decodable books out there. The design of the books has accessibility and cognitive load in mind as well. A lot of them have larger fonts than most, especially in the earlier levels, and there's really careful progression in the level of challenge. So children move smoothly through from decoding those first words to fluency. Here on the Rhino Readers team, I would say we pride ourselves on the richness and variety of the stories we offer and the diversity and representation that we have within the books. It is our goal to ensure that all children who pick up our scheme are represented in there somewhere. And the feedback that we've had demonstrates how important that is to teachers and how it is seen as a strength. Another thing I would say is that our approach gives cohesion with the phonics lessons. Kit and Sam are featured in many of the books, and so the children have that continuity between them being in the programme that they learn at school and also reading in the books that they read, and that really enhances the story-based appeal of the programme. I think as well, crucially, we also offer a very flexible and affordable book scheme. There's competitively priced printed copies, and there's the option to share ebooks with learners to read on their devices at home. So you've got that flexibility of being able to allocate books 2 ways. We also have an app that gives you the whole book library on one device. So if you've got anything, if you're lucky enough to have something like a class tablet, or you have reading volunteers, that's a really handy way to have all of the whole library in one handy place for them to be able to access. And finally, we also have an intervention programme specifically for boosting reading fluency while children move through phonics teaching. So we've got a range of fluency assessments at those different phonics lesson levels, and some additional printed text to boost fluency and speed at each level of the phonics programme. So if you have got learners who you feel like have going through the phonics okay, but maybe their actual reading, when they're reading to you, it is not as fluent as it could be, we've got some support for you there as well. And as Simon mentioned, we've also got a really strong Key Stage 2 catch-up offer, and we've got some decodable books to match those now, the decoders, and these have been written to support the phonics catch-up, but they've been specially designed to appeal to Key Stage 2 with the age-appropriate design and a range of topics to engage reluctant readers at this age, because we know it's really key for any materials that Key Stage 2 use to be age-appropriate to ensure that engagement. All of these decodable book collections can be explored online at the Twinkl store. So I will now hand back over to you, Laura, for a couple of last thoughts about some things that run through all the pillars here.
Thank you, Jo. So yeah, we're going to be wrapping up shortly, but we wanted to present the golden threads really that really run through all of the strong phonics provision that we've talked about today, which is engagement and inclusion. So we know that even with really strong systems in place, actually if learners aren't kind of engaged in the learning, phonics can fall quite flat. And also we know the importance of inclusive provision, and if our phonics isn't inclusive, then learners, some pupils might not be able to access the learning in the way that they need to, and that's something that we really need to make sure that all learners are able to do this. So because we know that phonics is something that children need to actively take part in to be able to kind of progress on their early reading journey, all learners need to be able to access it and be successful. So this looks like teaching being adapted, so every child can engage with the learning. In strong classrooms, we know that learners are actively involved, practicing, applying, and kind of having that opportunity. Pupils feel a sense of belonging and representation, which I know is something that Jo has talked about a lot with book provision and the Rhino readers. So being able to see themselves in the materials and feel kind of included in the learning. And we do know, and there's research to show, that learners are more kind of motivated and ready to learn when they are engaged, and that has a really direct impact on the focus, retention, and progress. So for Twinkl Phonics, at the heart of this really is the story-based approach. So Twinkl Phonics is first and foremost a systematic synthetic phonics programme, and it is built around direct, explicit, systematic teaching. As Simon's talked about, the progression, the lesson structure, and the teaching routines are all designed to ensure children develop really secure decoding skills through that daily instruction. But the story-based element is there to really provide context, which increases engagement and allows for a really immersive experience for learners, which I know comes through in a lot of the feedback we get. And the learners feeling kind of part of something and really invested in the characters and the adventures of Kit and Sam, and really looking forward to finding out what's happening next in their world. And so we found that this context really supports learners' motivation, as well as recall of prior learning and retention of new learning. Importantly, within our professional development that Becky's talked about, we are very clear about how the story should be used. So it's clear that staff are guided to read the story and modelling fluency and pace, and only pausing to address vocabulary where it's really necessary to understand and support the meaning. So this ensures that the story doesn't kind of interrupt or dilute phonics teaching, but that children hear a really strong model of fluent reading and, you know, really remaining that attention on applying their decoding skills within that meaningful context. So this brings us to the end of the session today. Thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to hopefully reflect as we've gone through on what those 5 pillars look like for you. The 5 pillars we've gone through are leadership and vision, staff confidence and CPD, high quality phonics teaching daily, assessment and intervention, decodable book provision, and of course, those golden threads of engagement and inclusion running through all of those areas. If you would like to explore the Twinkl Phonics packages that we refer to today, or find out a little bit more about the support available, please do get in touch with the schools team using the details on the screen. And myself or one of the team would also be more than happy to speak with you know, schools on a call if they'd like to find out more about how this could work.